Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, March 26th, 2024. And our top story today, eating disorders are rising among adolescent boys. And joining me now to help break this all down, Dr. Jason Nagata is a pediatrician at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Nagata, it is so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I gotta tell you, reading this article in the New York Times, I was really blown away because when I think of eating disorders, and forgive me for having biases, but I always think of it, I don't think about young men and boys having this disease, but your research, not just yours, but research indicates that young boys and men can have some level of eating disorder.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely not alone. I think there's a big stereotype in society that eating disorders primarily or only affect girls and women. But in fact, our research has shown that body image issues do affect boys and men in different ways than in girls and women. And I think that is part of the reason why they're under-recognized.
Yeah.
For instance, the masculine body ideal is really big and muscular. And so many guys with body image issues are actually not trying to lose weight at all. They're actually trying to get fit, bulk up, and become more muscular. But the typical assessment questions that we ask for eating disorders are all about fitness and weight loss. So I think a lot of the boys and men with body image issues are missed.
Yeah, and again, I apologize for my ignorance to the audience. It's just something, that I wasn't that familiar with. Jason, but this presents itself, and you talked a little bit about maybe boys and men, they have this image that they want to be Hulk Hogan. At least that's what I wanted to be when I was growing up, or Arnold Schwarzenegger. Maybe it's a little bit different today. Maybe it's Chris Evans, but it kind of presents itself very differently in men and males than it does in females.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's, unfortunately in society, there's a huge pressure for girls and women to be thin. And so 2/3 of teenage girls in our research across the US report that they're trying to actively lose weight. That's a phenomenal number. For boys, there's a lot of more diversity. Like 1/3 of teenage boys report that they're trying to gain weight and bulk up, so they're trying to become muscular. But 1/3 are actually also trying to lose weight. So there's also many boys and men out there who are trying to achieve a different body again than they currently have. But there's certainly many more men who are trying to build muscle and bulk up than there are girls and women. And I think that those are some of the people that we really miss when we're diagnosing and treating eating disorders.
For younger kids, and again, having not grown up with the internet and and social media, the strains today are very different than what I experienced. But for parents, are parents aware that their younger boys, maybe they're 18, 17, 16, into their teens, are they aware of this phenomena? And if not, how do they become more aware?
Yeah, I think that there's a general lack of awareness in society. And I think that particularly is true for parents, but I do think that more and more parents are becoming aware through education, like these programs. And also, I do think that, even Hollywood stars are being more acknowledging of these issues. But I do think that the pressures for muscularity have actually increased in the last few decades, as you mentioned. There are studies that have actually shown that boys' action figures in the last 30 years have become more and more muscular. Yeah. And yeah, if you think about even the traditional superheroes, like if you think about Batman, you think about like Adam West and like the actors who were the original Batman and the sort of body that they had, and you think about the other current Marvel superheroes, there's a big difference in terms of the amount of muscularity. So I do think that the pressures for muscularity have increased for our children today, even more so than in decades past. And I do think that one other recent phenomenon in the past decade has been social media. And I think that social media is unique from traditional media in that it's not a read-only environment. In the past, if you would watch movies or television, you're sort of just passively consuming that information, but most kids would never expect to be featured in a TV show or a movie. But now with social media, kids actually have pressure to produce content that shows their own bodies and puts their own bodies in display. And so now more than ever, boys are being pressured to show off their own bodies to get likes and followings and to fit in with peers.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the action figures, Doctor. Uh, I used to collect Star Wars figures, and Star Wars figures, they were what 3.75 inches. Then when Kenner came back out or re-released them, they were a lot muscular. I mean, Luke Skywalker, who Mark Hamill was not a big guy; he was just had a regular build. But the newer Luke Skywalker figure, he looked like he went to the gym and was doing some big powerlifting. I mean, and how does that, when you're seeing that stuff, I mean, it must distort. If you have no frame of reference, it must distort your own perception because you're looking at Luke, this figure, and you're like, hey, this guy was a hero. He saved the universe or the galaxy. Look at me. I don't have broad shoulders like he does.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about who the target audience is for action heroes. Or action figures. They're like younger kids, right? 5, 6, 7 years old. And so we are, putting in these sort of body ideals at a very young age now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, listen, I got to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're talking about treatment plans, and what parents can do. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Well, Jason, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2 this morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a real interesting conversation. And I guess I always go back to, if I'm a parent, my child is under 18, so they're not technically a legal adult. What can or should I do to defray this, what I would say is poor understanding of body image and compared to what we really look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think first, parents should just be on the lookout for warning signs of eating disorders or body image issues, particularly when some of these issues or concerns become preoccupations or even obsessions about appearance, weight, food, or exercise in a way that really worsens their child's quality of life and can even impair their social functioning or school functioning. For instance, I have patients who become so obsessed with working out that all of their free time is spent in the gym. And if they're not in the gym, they will feel guilty about it. They won't eat out with their family or friends anymore because they perceive the food their parents are cooking to be not high enough in protein or too high in fats. And so it really does impair, your ability to socialize in a healthy way. And it can even take away time from other important things in life. So I think that it's important to be on the lookout for some of these warning signs. And if you do see some of these, then I think a good place to start is with your primary care pediatrician or primary care doctor, who can do some further assessments and make referrals as appropriate. But one thing I will mention for parents is that I do think that there's sort of a slippery slope. Um, there's sort of a gradation. Many teenage boys are trying to become muscular, but not all of them will develop an eating disorder. And, to some extent, you know, 60 minutes of physical activity is recommended for your average teenager. But I do think, and so I think I'm not trying to say that kids shouldn't exercise. Certainly, at moderate levels, it can be healthful and healthy. I think it's more when it becomes an obsession that really starts to impair someone's quality of life, and take over all other aspects of life. That's kind of when parents need to be concerned.
Yeah. Again, that obsession, that overwhelming focus on one particular thing. And as you said, it's kind of a balancing act. Because say if you're really good at a sport, like a lot of kids now, they want to focus on baseball or football or basketball or soccer, right? And so they become overly focused on that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking more about, the focus on food and image. Jason, what about, when I was a kid growing up, we kind of dabbled in supplements to supplement our food intake. When I was in my teens and into my 20s, I was lifting weights. It doesn't look like it now, but I was into lifting weights. And supplementation was something I looked at, protein. Is there a balancing act there as well? I mean, to maybe not regulate it, but as a parent or just as a proprietor of an establishment, to be on the lookout for things, people overly consuming that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing that parents and teens should be aware about muscle building supplements is that for the most part, they're not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. And
Yeah.
nowadays, there's so many concoctions on the internet with very little quality control. So I would, just first of all, be very careful or cautious about what you're getting. There are all kinds of mixtures that are being sold online now. And studies have actually shown that many of them are tainted with anabolic steroids or illegal products. And many of them don't actually follow, if there's labeling of the breakdown, like studies that have actually looked at the chemical breakdown find that many of them are mislabeled. So I would just be cautious about, the things that you can buy online or over the counter because they're not regulated in any way. And so you might, get a product that you're not actually thinking that you're getting. And I do think that particularly, some of the substances are illegal, like anabolic steroids, and do have significant heart, liver, kidney consequences. And so people should be aware that some of the supplements, particularly, the ones that are illegal or, are known to have harms, should particularly be avoided.
Yeah, a really good insight there. Jason, last question. We've talked a lot about the role of the parent, even the role of the student. Is there a role here for government? You mentioned the FDA. They're not regulating a lot of these substances, but just going back to personal behavior, in the use of social media and these images, is there a role here, or is there not a role for both the federal and local state government?
Yeah, I think that's a really important issue, and it's actually one that's being debated right now. There are so many policies and legislations right now that are being discussed about regulations for social media, and due to their potential harms on teens and their body image. So I do think that that's an active issue that's primarily been focused on body image impacts on girls. But I think it's important that, we note the research does show that it has many of the same effects on boys. And some of these, performance enhancing substance products are being marketed on social media specifically to teenagers. And so I think that there are definitely questions that need to be addressed about advertisements to minors related to, muscle building substances as well as weight loss substances. And also, what is the appropriate age in which people should be able to start social media, and what kind of oversight do parents have on minors' social media use?
I said that was the last question, but I just thought of another one, if you don't mind, Jason. When I was a kid, seventh grade is when we had health class, and we learned about the human body, and part of that was reproduction. But is that I don't even know if they still do that. I guess they do. You got to learn it sometime. But is that the point in the curriculum where you start to talk about some of these issues? Like, it's not normal for a traditional male to have 4% or 5% body fat, having the six-pack abs. That's unrealistic. Yes, everyone's got the abs, but you're going to have some fat. So is that the time to cover this, or is it younger or older, or even concurrent throughout all the years of high school, for example?
Yeah. I think that definitely we see that the most common age of onset of eating disorders is during the teenage years. So I do think that during or prior to those years when people are going to be exposed to some of these issues is the best time to talk about them. And I also think that, technically right now, you need to be 13 years old to start a social media account. Now, anybody can lie about their age just by putting in any date of birth. But I do think that also prior to that age is a good time to talk about, digital literacy and ways to use social media for, benefit rather than harm, and to try to counsel children about, constant comparisons to other body images, and ways that they can use social media in a way that, promotes connection, but kind of limits comparisons and things that make people feel worse about their own body image.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about this one for a while. Jason, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest? Someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, then visit our website. Hey, we're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRNAM. We'll have some very special guests, and of course, another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.